Good evening, everybody. My name is Juan, and I've been asked to speak on the development of mega entertainment projects. But it's my hope that the principles that I'm about to present to you not only apply to mega entertainment projects, but also to tourism attractions of any size. Just as an introduction, I'm a partner at a firm called Proforma Advisors, and what we do is we analyze the economics of tourism projects, of theme parks, and all sorts of attractions all around the world. And just as an example of some of the projects that are in planning and construction that we've worked on, some of the Legoland projects around the world, Kidzania, which is an indoor theme park, Universal Studios, Fox, destination parks, and also some resorts in Macau. And I introduce these not to boast about our accomplishments, but because it's a fact of our business that every year we do about 40 different studies. And we're lucky if even one of them goes out of the planning process or goes out of the pre-development process into the planning process. And so what this suggests is that there's some kind of breakdown between the pre-development into the planning process. Something has not gone right in terms of the business models, in terms of the planning or the expectations. And so in this presentation, I'd like to introduce to you what I believe the three most common mistakes are. And so what is a mega entertainment project? As an example, here are two of the largest mega entertainment projects from my region of the world in Asia. Resorts World Sentosa was built for over $5 billion US, and Shanghai Disneyland is opening this year, and they are spending over $5 billion. But as I said before, I hope that the principles I present to you today are not only applicable to mega projects, but also tourism attractions of any size. And so what are the most common funding breakdowns from our point of view? In terms of the business plan, it's because people do not do these three factors correctly. The first is sizing. Sizing refers to how big or how small the park is built and how many people it can accommodate. Capital expenditures is the second one. And the third one is the reality, not understanding the reality of the business model of a tourism attraction. And we'll go through each of these in turn. But to start off with the first one, let's step back a little bit and think about a tourism attraction, like along the lines of the pictures that we've seen so far. What are these tourism attractions, and how do they make money? The revenue model is simple. They make money through tickets and merchandise and food and beverage. But when you think about it, you can play games in your house, you can shop online, you don't have to leave your house to do any of these things. The reason is, for these tourism attractions, is that they bring people together. They bring people to what was once a piece of land in the middle of nowhere, and it brings everyone together. And why do people go? Because it appeals to the emotions. So if you think about a tourism resort or an attraction, it evokes a sense of escape or aspiration, or a sense of wanting to connect with people, a physical thrill, a sense of enchantment. And the better a tourism attraction is able to evoke these emotions, the more successful it is. So why do I talk about these things? Let's think about the business model of an entertainment project as we're still on the subject of sizing, but let's think about the business model. If the tourism attraction is able to evoke enough of a sense of enchantment, escape, aspiration, and all sorts of other positive emotions, then people will be induced to pay a ticket to arrive at this place. The more of these emotions that you are able to evoke, and the longer you are able to induce people to stay, the more likely people are going to want to eat something or have other, basic needs met, such as, food and beverage, or wanting to buy something out of a sense of connection with your tourism attraction. So why is this important? It's because attendance to your attraction is vitally important. That's the starting line, that's the starting number in any kind of planning or any kind of business plan for your attraction. And if you build too big in what is a small market, then the people coming to your attraction are going to feel what we call a ghost town effect. And you'll walk around, there are many theme parks in China like this, where you walk around and there's no one there. And I mean, instead of evoking positive emotions, that's a very negative emotion. So that is that's a fundamental mistake of sizing, and it happens very often, unfortunately. The opposite is also a mistake. If you build too small in a large market, then you have a tremendous opportunity cost. 10 years ago, there were all sorts of pictures like these flying all around the world, where people were promising to build projects that were billions of dollars and attract tens of millions of people to their attractions. Now, in most parts of the world, the funding has become a lot tighter. So the attendance and the sizing that is shown in these kinds of drawings and in these kinds of business plans has to be feasible. It's no longer kind of the boom times of attraction development anymore. So what is a good benchmark? So for a large entertainment project, a good sizing benchmark is a capture rate of between 15 to 30% of the resident market. By capture rate, we mean the number of people within that market who are actually induced to go to the attraction. So if you have a market size of about 3 million people, then a penetration rate of 15% corresponds to 450,000 people. This is just a good sizing benchmark to start off with, so that your expectations of the project are not overinflated. The next factor is capital expenditures. It's a reality of tourism attractions that relative to other kind of real estate projects, their profit margins are decent. So their EBITDA margins are typically between 20 and 40%, depending on the labor cost. So if you have very low labor costs, like in China or other parts of Asia, your EBITDA margin can be 50% plus. But in the business modeling, what a lot of people leave out is actually capital expenditures. Capital expenditures are a cash outflow that's not reflected in an EBITDA profit margin. But the reason why you need capital expenditures is because for any kind of tourism attraction, you need to induce people to come over and over again. Because going back to the example of the 3 million market, if you have a penetration rate of 25%, then that means that you have 1/4 of the population who's already visited the park. The next year, if you don't capture some of those people again, then it's going to be difficult to meet your numbers. So just as an example, Futuroscope is a theme park in France. They have something called a 10-20-60 business plan. They reinvest 10% of their revenues on 20% of their attractions, so that 60% of their attendance in 1 year visits again. And this is just the reality of the attraction market, in that all sorts of entertainment projects around the world, big or small, whether you're a mega project or a small project, need to reinvest between 8 and 30% of revenues every year in order to either replace the attractions that are there or kind of renovate the attractions that have been kind of worn down. Now, the last point is understanding the reality of the business model. So when it comes to theme parks and tourism attractions, the not so secret is that there are tens of thousands of attractions in the world, but only a handful make very good money. So if you look at the bubbles on this chart, the bubble size corresponds to revenues. And you see that the blue and yellow circles are Disney parks and Universal parks, and everyone else is just kind of clustered together. So this is the reality of the business model, in that land costs are very high to build these kinds of tourism attractions. I think the best way to think about these kinds of attractions are they're almost like infrastructure, in that you spend a very high amount of money in the beginning and then it kind of pays off over time. So what is the implication of this? Is that funding is vitally important because it's so expensive. And when you think about funding, there are many ways to achieve funding. Typical equity and bond markets, private investors, institutional money, sovereign wealth funds, these are all funding sources. But I think what's unique to tourism attractions are that there are typically two different ways of kind of achieving funding or pre-funding. And the first one of them is what's referred to as peripheral development. So as an example, this is Magic Kingdom Park in Walt Disney World in Orlando, in Florida. But when you zoom out, you see that it's part of a much larger resort, which includes all sorts of land uses. It has 3 other theme parks, it has 2 water parks, it has numerous hotels, it has retail, parking, it even has a lake. The lesson to be drawn from this is that, whatever size of tourism attraction you're building, if you think about the first point I made, which is that these are developments which bring together lots of people, is that the standing population in one of these tourism attractions can be anywhere from 10,000 to 40,000 plus per day. In the example of Disneyland, they achieve more than 80,000 people per day inside this resort. So it's almost like a city. This means that all of these people are going to need some kind of fulfillment of basic human needs, such as resting or sleeping. They need places to eat and shop, places to park their cars. And so one thing you can do with tourism attractions that are difficult to do with other types of real estate is that by building a tourism attraction, you raise the value of the land around your tourism attraction. You can sell these plots of land as a pre-funding mechanism, or you could just develop it yourself for the cash flow. And ultimately, you are going to achieve a higher rate of return on those surrounding pieces of land than you will for your tourism attraction in itself. The second kind of unique funding mechanism is government for a tourism attraction. And the reason why this is economic impact. And if you think about it, the mega tourism resort I mentioned before, it will cost billions of dollars in construction and have a direct impact on the GDP of that region. It'll create employment in thousands of jobs, and that's only the first one-time impact. Once it's up and running, represented by that gold star there, there's continuous revenues every year generated from ticket sales, from F&B, from retail. And then the third layer is indirect employment and indirect revenues, in that people come from all over the world and from different regions into your region and spend on different things like hotel, F&B, and retail. And so the economic impacts can be tremendous. In this business, we talk about economic multipliers, and essentially it means that every dollar spent is actually not only a dollar. It leads to 1.2 or 1.5 or even $2 down the line, because one person's revenue is actually one person's income, and that person who makes that income will be induced to spend it elsewhere. And so there's a tremendous impact. There's a tremendous tax kind of impact as well. And so the economic impact may actually make it a bargain for the government to help participate or invest in the park. As an example, I'm from Hong Kong, and the Hong Kong government actually invested tremendously in the Hong Kong Disney Resort. This is an example of, this is basically the sources side of the sources and uses sheet of the Hong Kong Disneyland funding. And you can see that not only did the Hong Kong government invest its own money in the form of equity, but it contributed also with loans. It helped acquire the land, and it helped build the infrastructure as well, directly to the park. And so basically, in summary, what I'd like to conclude with is that these types of tourism projects can be enormously costly. And as a result, there is a need to plan very effectively for the sizing, for the capital expenditures. We have many clients who spend millions of dollars just in the planning process, only to have it fail because they didn't make allowances for these things in their business plan. But once again, because of its nature as a draw of people, and the fact that it brings people together in one place, there are different types of funding that will be available that are unique just to tourism attractions. That's my talk, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
السلام عليكم. لما أحب أبني مدينة ترفيهية في الرياض، كيف أستطيع أني أتغلب على الحر اللي الشديد في الرياض؟ ما في ترجمة؟
Sorry, what was the last part of the question? Overcome? Probably the best thing to do would be to build some kind of indoor entertainment attraction. So whether as an anchor inside an existing shopping mall, or inside kind of like a warehouse space. That way you can overcome the climate considerations. This is what you see, theme parks in Dubai and Abu Dhabi doing. You don't really have any outdoor attractions there because it's too hot. Yeah.
مكلفة.
Okay.
مساء الخير. بالنسبة لهونغ كونغ رحت أنا ديزني هناك، بس العدد اللي هو مدينة كاملة، لاحظت إن في الصورة ديزني إن هي مكان صغير وهي كبير جدا، يعني المنتجع كبير، بس واخذة مساحة الأرض هذه للحكومة أم هي للأشخاص معينة. يعني شخص عادي ما يقدر ياخذ المساحة الكبيرة ذا الحكومة.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. So the government helped in purchasing the plot of land. If you go back here and you look at the land premium, the third to last line, the government actually paid a certain price for the land, and then they paid an extra for the premium of purchasing it. So you're right. As for the first point, that it is small, it started off small, but over time, over the last 10 years that it's been in operation, it's gotten steadily bigger. And you know, one of the things about any kind of tourism attraction is that it doesn't necessarily have to be a very big plot of land. The way you measure the amount of people who can come to your attraction is through something called a capacity number. And a capacity number is basically the number of experiences and attractions that anybody in the park can do in 1 hour. So you can have a small theme park, but then program in, using designers, a very high capacity. So if you have, say, like a dark ride, which is like a theme park ride that takes place inside a warehouse-looking thing, those kinds of attractions can entertain about 3,000 people per hour, whereas a roller coaster might only be able to entertain about 1,500 people per hour. So if you look at Disney, Hong Kong Disney, it is smaller than other theme parks, but it has more of the very high capacity attractions rather than the low capacity attractions.
I have a question about investment in Saudi Arabia. Before we speak about the attraction of, education of tourism here, most probably been attracted to outside of Saudi Arabia than here, because the economy investment in Saudi Arabia about tourism, and if anybody want to go, tourism, it's attracted to Mecca, Medina, and other places, which is, we can say it, holy tourism, or whatever you called it. There isn't environment which encourage people or businessmen to invest in this sector. Only the private sector doing in that. The government, their intention or their the other side of spending money. So we need to encourage people, or give education for the people to believe that the investment in Saudi Arabia, which will be more going outside.
So, sorry, was that a question or a statement? I agree with you. Yeah. Yeah.
It is a question. Most of Saudis goes outside the inside Saudi Arabia. So what's the way of get attention to businessmen to invest in this sector? That's what I mean. Thank you.
So I haven't studied Saudi Arabia very long. This is my first time in Saudi Arabia. But what I do know is that there's a tremendous amount of tourists or potential tourists who are Saudi, but they leave the country to go to different places instead, and they spend their money outside of Saudi Arabia instead of inside. So I think a good starting point might be to try to examine where people are going and where they're spending money, and the reasons behind that. I think that's probably the most logical starting point. In terms of education, I'm not sure how that would be brought about, except through maybe marketing campaigns or other things.
طبعا يعني كلنا نعرف المملكة العربية السعودية تتميز بمناخ حار وجاف أيضا. سؤالي هو: ألا تعتقد أن القرية الترفيهية المائية مناسبة خصوصا في المملكة العربية السعودية؟ وشكرا.
So, as I said before, I think indoor attractions are more suitable to this kind of climate. If you look at the development of theme parks and attractions in the world right now, we're kind of heading into that direction. And the reason is because there's been so much urbanization all around the world that land costs in most cities and around cities are so expensive that to build outdoor theme parks are very prohibitively expensive. So the developers now that we're working with, they're all kind of aiming for indoor experiences. And these days there's tremendous hype around virtual reality or augmented reality. And these types of experiences are what people are trying to design. And this is the cutting edge. So I think, in this kind of climate, that's probably more suitable. The other type of attraction that could be suitable for this market, although I am not sure, whether it works culturally, so please pardon my ignorance, is water parks. And if you go to Abu Dhabi, there's a very large water park, and they've developed it because of the climate, but it works very well. But again, that's something I'm not sure about whether it works culturally here, but that could be another alternative. The other type of attraction is a cultural or tourism type of attraction. So it doesn't only have to be like wild rides and things where you participate outdoors. It can be very nicely landscaped areas with like rivers and streams running through them, gardens, and so things that provide shade for people and provide a sense of coolness. So there are different things you can do with landscaping that would make it more amenable for people to spend time there. But that's, that is the realm of a designer.
Hello. Do you think it's a good opportunity for international entertainment companies such as theme parks to invest in Saudi Arabia?
Do you mean outside investors?
Yes,
like
outside
international investors.
Yes, international investors, such as Disneyland and other water theme parks.
Sure. I think Saudi Arabia has tremendous assets. So it has a lot of assets that other countries in the region do not have, including a very young population, a high number of people, and a high number of tourists who come to Saudi Arabia already. I think there are several things in terms of maybe government policies that investors might be wary of. But it has these tremendous assets, and I think in order to bring someone like a Disney or a Universal, because of the size and scale of these companies, they're only going to pick one market in a region at a time. So Saudi Arabia would have to prove why this is a better market than, say, Dubai or Abu Dhabi. I think it can, but in order to prove that, I think it will also need a very strong partnership with the government. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
The last question. When you speak about where is the people will going and how people will spending their money, and that have many things about education and cultural and things like that. What is the main aim that will be let me when you want to study about exactly enjoyment or leisure facilities in the area. The main idea or the main aims that will let me to take when you study to make leisure facilities in area. Yeah. In initial studies. In initial study, when I want to make entertainment or leisure facilities to people, what is the main issue that I will depend on that? Yeah.
So the question is, what is the main problem to address in the main themes to address? You know, maybe we can have a conversation afterwards. We could talk more in depth about this.
Sorry. Just one question, I think. Sorry. What do you think the more probability for any entertainment project to make it? It's to investment in the rights to achieve more profitability, or investment in the festival or the activity. It will be on the location. What it will be more profitability for the entertainment location?
What will be more profitable?
Profitability as the maybe the rights. You know, now the rights it's have the huge number from the money.
Yeah.
Okay, and the festival also the same, but it's for the company if need to decide to invest in the rights or invest in the festival in their location.
Well, ideally you would have some kind of mix. So it wouldn't be only just rides or only a festival, but ideally you would have some kind of mix. So a ride is important to have because it serves as kind of like the landmark attraction. So if you have a big roller coaster, then that's something you could put on all of your marketing materials. It's something that you could see when you're driving past it. So it's almost kind of like a marketing tool to get people in. And the festivals are, you know, it's almost kind of like a branding exercise as well. So I think it's hard to say whether you want one or the other. You would want an ideal mix.
I will invest in the two, in the festival and this. But what the more profitability? I didn't mean I will take care about the festival and didn't take care about the rights. But according to the rights, I will do it the best. But as the festival, it's will making profitability or should to increasing my rights in the location?
Yeah, well, I think it depends on the festival because I'm not sure about festivals in Saudi Arabia, but many festivals around the world are kind of like barely break-even operations. So it really depends on your ability and your confidence that you can pick the right theme or you pick the right you know, you pick the right theme for the festival to get millions of people, because that would be the only way to make a lot of money. But the other thing about festivals is that you don't have to invest as much as you would in a ride, because a festival sometimes is only 3 days or 2 days. So it's a lower capital investment in the beginning.